If Montana State can have some success, they'll make the game close. If Adam Bach and company shut them down and hold them to 4 yards a carry, 3.5 yards a carry, it'll be a long day and a long trip back to Bozeman. So.
Welcome to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kyler Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation, watch out at the Dana Dyke House this weekend. The Bobcats are coming running to take on the Jackrabbits. And boy, oh boy, will we see as much revenge as we saw the Snakes get on some JSU Tigers. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. If you were pumped for week 0's games and you were pumped for week 1's games, get ready for what is coming up this weekend. This might be one of the best weekend matchups for the beginning of a season that we've ever seen, and it's all about to get broken down on tonight's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. The OG crew is here, Jamie, Kyler, and Matt, and Jamie, we saw a pretty impressive performance by the Bison out there in Virginia. Why don't you break that down a little bit? That game that you were watching this weekend.
Yeah. It was a really solid first half by the Bucknell Bison. They don't use it as a Z up in Pennsylvania, even though they're more Dutch than you guys. Solid first half. You had good quarterback to receiver connection. Fell apart a little bit for them in the second half, dealing against that FBS depth that they were facing, but solid performance from them in the first half. They were working in both phases of the game. Their punt coverage could have used a little work, but overall a good day for the Bucknell Bison. Probably the best performance by a Bison on Saturday.
I think there's no better way to start a show there. Besides thanking our sponsors, of course, Walk On Apparel and the Versus Sports Simulator. Both amazing companies. Make sure you grab some gear from Walk On and make sure you download the Versus Sports Simulator app to increase the cash in your pocket when you're doing a little bit of gambling. And I don't want to waste any time here today. I want to get right into the Big Seven because I think our first question is just right up Kyler Neal's alley. So let's get things kicking for a big weekend coming up for the FCS.
The top 7 FCS topics of the week. This is the Big 7.
Gentlemen, this is the time where we decide who's winning the national championship and whose season is over, of course. And kicking off the Big 7 in that fashion is Mr. Everly Richards. Everly, we appreciate this question. And Kyler, our teams matched up. We saw other squads match up. Honestly, we really didn't see a lot of close games, in my opinion, from when I looked across the big ones. But give us your biggest overreactions after week 1, Everly says. Whose season's already lost, and who are we hyping for a deep run now? Did we take anything away, or what did we see last week?
The biggest overreaction is somehow now North Alabama is really good because they lost by 10 to Mercer. I don't know. No, that was the week before, but North Alabama, who they play?
They beat
Chattanooga.
Yep. Oh, they beat Chattanooga. That's what it was. So now all of a sudden, North Alabama is this powerhouse that is going to run the South. Pump the brakes. Maybe just Chattanooga sucks. When was the last time Chattanooga's done anything good in the last 20 years?
2 weeks in a row, you're going to do this to my Lions. 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row. That's my biggest overreaction. Whose season's already dead? Probably Fordham. It is a one big league, but they definitely have lost their talent, and we will see if they can actually prevail for maybe a Holy Cross or who knows. Merrimack has actually looked good in those little smaller conferences too. But yeah, I would say Fordham's season's already over, and the biggest overreaction is North Alabama is this powerhouse that we just haven't seen in a while.
Oh, they're powerhouse at the D2 level, and they're getting their feet under them. Hey, 41-27 is nothing to like just be like, oh, they pulled the upset on a last second field goal. Like when you literally look up Chattanooga Athletics article about that game, it says Comeback rally falls short in 41-27 loss. Comeback rally attempt. I mean, that's a butt kicking.
Maybe the SoCon just isn't as good as we thought.
Oh, talk about overreaction. Who knows? I think I have to bounce back on UTEP and Incarnate Word. I mean, that was the game, right? Like that was going to happen. Is UTEP was going to lose to Incarnate Word. Book it. We'll see what happens after that. And it ends in a 28-14 game where UTEP actually ends up on top.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, boy, based off strength of schedule and some other factors, Incarnate Word, to make sure they have home field advantage, they're probably going to need to run the table or at least get that FBS win to maybe offset some other close wins or losses. So I guess my overreaction is going to be that Incarnate Word might already be behind the 8 ball in terms of really good playoff seeding or what we're going to see from this team this year. So
Calzada did not look good.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't a Lindsey Scott out there. I think we got to at least acknowledge that right off the bat. So Jamie, besides Bucknell being amazing, what do you got, my man?
Well, I mean, I think we saw Southern Illinois. Got the shirt on. There's my winning team of the week. Go in and show in a home game against Austin Peay that they are going to be a team in the Valley to look out for. Liked what I saw from them, but it also shows what I thought about Austin Peay coming in. I did rank them, but if you had listened to me or talked to me about what I changed in my rankings if I had gone back, a couple weeks later after some thought, I would have moved Austin Peay and Chattanooga both out of my top 25. And after 1 week, both of those statements look good. Whose season is lost? I'm going to take the opportunity. It's Richmond. They lost to Morgan State.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, if you listen to what I've said since our spring off-season podcast, I said Richmond is going to be a down team this year. A lot of people had them in their top 25s. I did not. I just didn't see it. They lost too much. And you can say, oh, Richmond has a system where they just retool at the offense position. They got a good defense. It didn't happen. They lost to Morgan State. Now, I'm not going to hype Morgan State as a MEAC power because if you think about that, Morgan State does tend to find a win every now and then. If you think back to when North Carolina A&T was really good a few years ago in the MEAC, they shockingly lost to Morgan State. Richmond, Austin Peay, Chattanooga, big time down arrow, Southern Illinois arrow up, and another arrow up. And I'm not saying it's a playoff team, not even saying they're top half of their conference. But after 2 weeks, 2 pretty impressive games from Albany. I know the first was the first week over Fordham. That's a good win for them. Fordham being down, Kyler's dead right on that. But they gave Marshall everything they could handle this past week, and gosh darn if they didn't near win. And another CA team that went on the road to a Sun Belt team, Rhode Island.
Boys.
Couple of plays opposite way there. A couple decisions. Not going to bang on the referees. I think they got it wrong at the end, but Rhode Island had other opportunities. But they looked really good. Kasim Hill looks like he's going to be one of the top players in the FCS this year.
Man, there is a lot to react to on week 1. And how about maybe Montana? Montana and Butler?
Yeah.
Have you
35-20?
But have you seen Montana's schedule?
In terms of good or bad?
In terms of probably one of the easiest schedules out of all the CA, Missouri Valley, and Big Sky.
But probably leads to...
I think they could sleepwalk their way to 8 wins.
Okay. But past quarterfinals, which is really what they need for that program.
That's where it's going to be difficult. And I would not bet on them to make it past the quarters for sure. Quarters probably because they'll get some home field advantage in December. It's tough to play. But, I would not put them as any type of contender right now. They did not look good.
Yeah, the D2 team they play, Vera State, is probably their best out-of-conference game too.
Yeah, it will definitely be their toughest out-of-conference game.
Between Butler and Utah Tech and Ferris State.
That is a bold strategy. Well, Utah Tech comes away with the win. I'm going to be purchasing some more walk-on apparel for that, for sure. All right, Kyler Neal, you and I had some messages going back and forth. Our great friend Kelsey there at US Bank Stadium, I knew her tickets would be better than mine. Can't even call
Way
them
better.
tickets. She was on the sidelines. Thankfully, I did the smart way. I bought nosebleed tickets in section like 300, way up above. Show up to the stadium, and they're like, yeah, we're not putting staff up in 300. Go to the ticket reallocation center. And I was
They
in
were
row
actually
26 from the
selling-
field.
They were selling 300 levels.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was like, this is really dumb, but
Yeah.
I'll pay for the cheaper tickets. Here we go. Brandon Anderson and Andrew Markham. Brandon Anderson says, I'm allowed a tongue-in-cheek question. Is NDSU in trouble for not beating a team by 40 plus? And Andrew Markham wants to know, is NDSU a balanced offense this year and found a small amount of passing game, or did Eastern Washington just sell out on the run more than they should have? Alrighty, well, Kyler, give me your unbiased or biased breakdown on what you saw from that game from NDSU. What did you take away from them from last year to what you saw in that matchup?
NDSU played a more clean game than probably what they did last year. They definitely limited their mistakes, but I don't see, and maybe this is just the wrong of me, I don't see this massive improvement overall. And it's going to be hard to justify seeing that improvement when, like we talked about last week, Eastern's run defense was ranked dead last in the FCS last year, right? So this is hard to even really have a gauge. Do we know, is Eastern improved and that made NDSU look that much more dominant because maybe it's an improved Eastern, maybe it's the same Eastern as last year? And then that's not an amazing performance if that's the same defense as we were, playing last year. So it's just kind of what you would expect NDSU to do, in my opinion. I think I was calling out in the preseason a lot. I don't know if you saw it. I kept saying NDSU by 28. That was in the comments a lot, and everyone was starting to hype it up, going, no, it'll be closer to that. And I don't know. It was about what I thought probably, in the middle of the summer. So we'll see. But, yeah, I don't know. They looked fine. They looked like one of the few contenders who can maybe go toe-to-toe with the South Dakota State, but they didn't look improved in my mind. And it's hard to justify it because we don't know if Eastern is improved or if they're really as bad as they were last year. If they're as bad as they were last year, it's not that great of a performance. It's just a standard performance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say defensively, I'm going to defend NDSU a lot here. And I called it the first couple podcasts and on Twitter a little bit in the offseason where I was just like, I think the defense is going to be 100 times better. And I think the defensive line specifically will have grown up a lot. I think the guys who are going to get their opportunities to now start in that secondary might have a little bit of a learning, but I just felt like the team and the guys who want to be on that team, portal be damned, all these other factors, injuries, they're all healthy, that the defense would be better. And I saw the tried and true NDSU defense, which is like they do not miss open tackles. And last year you saw it all the time. The defensive line getting gutted up the middle, gutted left, gutted right, just simplistic stuff offenses would throw at our run defense. I didn't see that out of this game. And Eastern's line, just like Kyler was saying, big boys. That was not a small offensive line by any stretch of the imagination. Good athletes on the outside.
It looks slow,
though. Yeah, slower than what I would be accustomed to out of Eastern, but I was insanely impressed with NDSU's defense on that. My thought process there. I do think Cam Miller and the offense used a lot more of the passing concept than I expected. I still have my issues with the play calling. I wish they were a little more SDSU-ish in that passing attack. But my takeaway was this. I was thinking this game would be a good measure to think, okay, is NDSU going to be a team that could lose 2 or 3, or are they a team that is like one of the 1 or 2 that could lose by 10 to SDSU and Frisco? Yes, I'm saying it now. It's no mystery. You guys all probably agree. I think SDSU is going undefeated, 15-0. I think they're going to win the Natty. But I wanted to be like, okay, will we even be competitive versus a team that is so much better? So I think NDSU has put themselves with that performance in kind of people kind of thinking, okay, yeah, it's probably them and Montana State and maybe an outlier to try to beat SDSU, even though it's very doubtful that they do.
What was that thought process before the game? Because, again, they were ranked number 2 in the nation.
No, I honestly, well, we talked about that, Kyle. I thought they were getting the benefit of the doubt because when you looked at the linebackers that were gone, the portal people that were going, the secondary, how young and inexperienced it would be, combined with two Nash Jensen, you got two offensive linemen now in the NFL on 53-man rosters. You lost more weapons to the portal. You're like, jeepers, you don't have receivers or tight ends. You got one running back. The secondary is gone. The linebackers are gone. Like, if this game had been 38-31, NDSU wins, I'd be like, oh, golly. So I took more positives out of it because of the defensive performance, and I thought Cam looked good outside of one bad pass.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did look good. I think they should let him cook a lot more this year, personally. So
yeah, turn him into a little Easton Stick.
Yeah, why not?
Can.
Jamie, your Bucknell Bison, you got love for them. Any love for the Bison this weekend for Andrew and Brandon's question?
I mean, as far as NDSU, I saw what I've seen for years from them. You got a quarterback that completed 72% of his passes. He threw 2 touchdowns, both of them to a tight end. You had a running game that ran for 337 yards, 8.6 a carry, a defense that allowed 2.6 a carry. And the only thing, the secondary, I mean, they gave up less than 60%. I mean, it's 23 completions for 266. I saw what I always see from NDSU, a team that takes care of business. I saw a team that didn't turn the ball over. A lot more, like you said, I think you said a cleaner game. I think we saw the number 2 team in the nation. That's exactly what I expected. It's what I saw. We saw an Eastern team who still has a bad run defense, who still makes some plays in the passing game and has an arrow pointing up, but we got the result we kind of expected out of this. As much as we wanted to hype it up, and maybe even I wanted to hype it up that it was going to be a 1-2 score game, this is what we kind of thought would happen.
Yeah, from what I know and from what I'm sourced is like nobody said this first part about it, but like despite the fact that it's probably SDSU's year, 15-0, probably going undefeated, probably winning the Natty, from NDSU perspective, you're going to see more of a heart and soul of NDSU players and team buying back into what NDSU football is. You'll see hard-nosed, disciplined, clean, grindstone type of football. So, that might not win you a Natty, but it is going to be more fun to watch, at least from a fan perspective.
This game kind of reminded me of last year when you played A&T.
Yep.
And again, maybe A&T last year and Eastern last year were on the same page. They both weren't good teams. Luckily, A&T got a little bit of a more favorable schedule being in the Big South, but you guys dominated them last year, and then it was the same thing. So again, until maybe it's week 4 and we know what teams are improved or not, if this is the same Eastern team as last year, I would calmly say NDSU hasn't improved. If they are better than they were last year, as Eastern Washington, then cool. It is a definitely improvement from NDSU, but they did play clean. But again, I need to see more out of the next few weeks before I can make any type of adjustment. It looked like NDSU playing NDSU ball.
Very good. Well, we'll see in terms of people playing their style of ball. We didn't see anybody shoot for the moon and upset any FBS teams. So Dustin Helton, the Rev, wants to know, out of the FCS versus FBS games, who surprised you and who disappointed you in their performance? This is a great question. All right, Jamie, we have to start with you, man, because your Dukes are up there at that FBS level. Surprises and disappointments in this world, my man.
I mean, obviously, from a disappointment standpoint, we got to start with Incarnate Word. We all had very high expectations, and it didn't happen. And it wasn't even close to happening. I was very shocked. I was shocked that Northern Iowa didn't put up more offensively against Iowa State. I expected Theo Day to have a real big game and really challenge them. On the other side, who surprised me, pretty much every damn team that played against Sunbelt teams. I mean, Stephen F. Austin, I'm going to give Rev a shout. I mean, SFA hung in there for a while. Rhode Island had every opportunity to beat Georgia State, and maybe they should have. Albany, every opportunity to win that game. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams that really came out and played good ball, but nobody could get it done. I mean, I'm going to give a shout out because I'm going to do it every week. Southern Utah, 3 points to Arizona State. I know that's a bad team. I know it's a mess, but it's still a P5 team, and they still hung in there. I mean, I think if you ask Coach Fitzgerald, Justin Miller didn't have anywhere near the game you would have wanted him to have, but they hung in there. I mean, you could go up and down. I mean, I could sit here and scroll and give you probably 5 more teams that shocked me that they got close, but they just never pulled it out. I mean, you almost were right, Matt, with Maine.
Maine, man, 2 points away. Come on. I was just, Rev tagged me in that. Hey, I felt for you too, Jamie. Well, you were actually right because you talked about Southern Utah and you said they're going to lead at some point. But, dude, Southern Utah.
They never did.
They never led, though.
Oh, they
I
never
got that
led?
wrong.
In 20. Okay.
No.
Well, they started 21 to what? 0 or 21-7?
They won the second half.
Oh,
14-3.
After that
So-
2-hour delay.
Both teams got to play the same thing.
For sure.
I'll admit I didn't watch 1 second of it, but I saw 24. I saw 24-21, and I was like, they had to have led at some point. But still, 3-point loss. Come on.
I said they give them a game, and they would come out and do some things. It's offensively they didn't play very well, but they hung in there. They made some plays in special teams, and all 3 phases matter. And I think they kind of turned their momentum a little bit with the block punt touchdown. So they go to BYU this week, so they got another shot at one.
Yeah, they're not backing down from the FBS whatsoever. Yeah, you mentioned it, Jamie, but I was just so proud of Maine, but I was like, man, 2 points away from that crappy CUSA Florida International airline or whatever the heck that school is. I
Maybe
really
they
wanted
played
them
up in a parking lot.
yeah, really wanted them to pull it off. But I guess disappointed just as a whole to just not get one. There was a lot of close, but to not get one victory out of 42 games. And we think like NIL, and you can see the statistics of FBS players who've transferred down to the FCS. You would think that the gap would have closed a little bit, especially because you played a lot of non-power fives throughout this last week. So I would say on a grand scale, pretty disappointed in that whole thing. So, Kyler, are you going to jump in? You know a lot more about the incarnate word stuff and all that. You going to jump more into that, or are you going to take us in a different direction?
Yeah, I was actually pretty disappointed in that. I watched about half of it off and on. It was fairly close going back and forth until about halftime. Then it just looked like there's a few plays after that. Incarnate Word just never really had a shot. I don't know. They looked slow. They didn't look like it was the same team that we saw last year. I do not think Lindsey Scott would have struggled as much because they really couldn't get anything on the offensive side of the ball. So maybe there is some hardship, or maybe UTEP is a little bit better. I know we clown them, and I did say, they absolutely suck, but they are improving. Maybe this is UTEP's year where they're going to have some, do some big things. But overall, man, that was pretty shitty. The only team I'm actually going to get props to is Central Arkansas. I didn't think they would hang that close with, Oklahoma State. It was literally, the game was, you still could see Central Arkansas winning going into the fourth quarter. It was a 1-possession game. Central Arkansas was battling. I think it was the only game on, which was pretty cool. But yeah, that's the only one I'm giving props. Everything else outside of, the Southern Utah was pretty cool until the delay. But other than that, there was no real great performances. There's a few close CAA losses. Oh, well, they're not playing great teams. Gardner Webb, who cares? App State sucks. The Fun Belt sucks. So, yeah, at the end of the day, Central Arkansas is the only one where I'm giving props.
Happy birthday, Will Seiler, by the way. Will Seiler. Mr. Seiler, happy birthday. Not intentional at all. Yeah, those Bears, we love those UCA Bears. We're excited to see how they play out this year. Maybe our predictions on them are right, the way Jamie Williams' predictions or hunches about Southern Illinois and Austin Peay may have been correct. And Mr. Alex Kenkel wants to know, Southern Illinois University, are they back to the team that's been a playoff contender, or is everyone way too high on Austin Peay, or is it a little bit of both? And Jamie Williams, you're rocking that awesome Jeremiah Rash Southern Illinois gear tonight. And you are Mr. Ranking 127. What do you think? Austin Peay too high? SIU underrated? Where do we sit?
Yeah, a little of both. I mean, I've said it about Southern Illinois. I thought they had the ability to be that team that comes back to a little bit of prominence in the Valley and in the FCS. But I kept them a little bit outside of my rankings because I wanted to see it. And I said, I put Austin Peay in because I thought there was something there. But after a little bit more research, given another opportunity, I would have not ranked them. And that's kind of what happened. Southern Illinois is in my ranking this week. I know I haven't put it out there yet. Been kind of busy over the holiday weekend. It'll come out at some point here in the next couple of days. It's always going to go up there. But I didn't think Mike DeLillo played very well for Austin Peay. I mean, his numbers wound up looking okay, but while the game was still, quote unquote, a game, he wasn't very good. They scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. It was 42-3 entering the third. Like that was a butt whooping. And Southern Illinois, I mean, Nick Baker efficient enough, 3 touchdown passes. I would have liked to see a little bit more from the running game of Southern Illinois. I mean, 3.8 yards a carry, but they did grind it out. 44 carries. You keep the change moving, keep it going, and I'm looking for a little bit better things from Southern Illinois than even I might have thought. Let's see if they can have a good season. I believe they have an FBS opponent that could potentially knock off this week. I think they've got Northern Illinois. Let's go directional Illinois this week. See if they can go up there and take a scalp. I don't know. If they do, then Arrow way up. Right now I've got Arrow up. So let's see what the Salukis can do.
Yeah, I want to take a little bit of pause on Southern Illinois almost until I almost want to see if they're going to replace Youngstown State for the hype. You know what I mean? You look at the schedule and SEMO, Missouri State, they'll beat both of those teams, and we'll see what happens in Northern Illinois. Let's even say they're 4-0 at that point. Like, everybody has hyped up this Youngstown State team that I'm personally not super high on, and I want to see what that matchup looks like. I don't think they're going to go to the Fargo Dome and win. I don't think they're going to beat South Dakota State, but you look at the rest of their schedule, Murray State, they'll kill. Western Illinois, they'll kill. They get to host South Dakota. That should be a win. They've got a real opportunity to be that third Missouri Valley team, fourth Missouri Valley team inside the playoff field. Their schedule is pretty beneficial. They pull off some upset against one of the Dakota schools. Holy moly, here we go. Also, I think Nick Baker's been on the team since 2015. I think he's been there for literally ever. But I'm going to put a little pause on Southern Illinois hype. I do think Austin Peay was a little bit overvalued from what I was seeing from the voters early on. They're like a team that you could get a hunch on about an auto bid, but you're not going to think they're going to go toe-to-toe with a playoff caliber Missouri Valley team. And maybe that gives us our answer here, is Austin Peay isn't a team you would view could beat Missouri Valley, second, third place team in the playoff. Maybe we got an early preview of this. I don't know. Kyler, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I just don't think Austin Peay is very good. I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't think they're good. This wasn't that much of a test for Southern Illinois, but what I will say is Southern Illinois at least passes the eye test. Sometimes when you do not play a not very good team and you're up 42-3 going in the fourth quarter, I don't care. That passes the eye test. I don't think Austin Peay should have had any preseason, votes. I don't think they've ever done anything outside of one playoff win way back like 3-4 years ago when they shocked Sac State. Other than that, they haven't really done much for me to go, yeah, they're this dominant team that's going to give everyone a run for their money. They're this top 25 caliber team. Nope, they were a flash in the pan, just like, Campbell when they were getting all these recruiting or these rankings just because of their class when they haven't done anything to prove it. But Southern Illinois at least passes the eye test. And looking at their schedule, I mean, they actually have a realistic shot to maybe go 9-2 and even have an FBS win. They have a realistic shot to potentially have a seed. They were an up and down team last year. I mean, they struggled versus SEMO. They struggled first in Cardinal, but then they had, they beat Northwestern. So they were an up and down team last year. We'll see what they are this year. But as of right now, they at least passed the eye test. And looking at the next few weeks, I wouldn't be too nervous if I was Southern Illinois. You're potentially going to start 5-0 before your first maybe tougher matchup versus another playoff caliber team. I don't know. SEMO, I guess, looks good. So we'll see.
It should be fun to see how it all plays out, guys. And I just switched 2 questions around. That's why there was the pause if you're listening to the podcast, or the nothing happening on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe. Because I just switched one of the questions around because Kyler and Jamie just tend to give me transitions that work perfectly. I wish we pre-planned them. And he brought up Campbell, so I just switched 2 questions. And we're going to have Andrew. Both these questions were already Big 7, but I'm going to put this one first for the transition. Andrew Markham, one of our great friends. I'm enjoying a great margarita for you tonight, my man. He wants to know, did William and Mary underperform, or has Campbell finally started to show they're developing the recruits they have brought in the past few years? There you go. Kyler, I'll give you a breath here since Jamie is Mr. CAA and his conference he loves, #Flow Sports. And Jamie, what do you think? Do you think William and Mary underperformed? You've had some opinions on them this early preseason, or is Campbell ready to roll?
I think they started shaky. I think the first couple of drives, they were very shaky, but I think overall, William and Mary handled that game the way they needed to. I mean, they're going to be the top team in the CAA, still rolled up 450 yards, 270 on the ground. Haj Malik Williams, Campbell quarterback. That's not, I mean, he's been there. He might be older than Nick Baker. I'm not sure. Seems like he's been there forever too. He had a great game, 22 out of 26. But they still had less than 3 yards of carry rushing. So the William & Mary front seven did its job, had a little shakiness in the secondary. William & Mary ran for 6 yards of carry. So almost like NDSU, it's kind of what I expected. They just started a little slower than I would have thought. But it was still 34-17 with a minute to go in the game. So I think we saw exactly what we thought we would get out of William & Mary and Campbell. William & Mary being the top CAA team, Campbell being a team that's new to the CAA and has a little bit of an uphill battle, but we'll give teams a challenge for a little while.
This is such a dumb question, but with as much integrity as you can here, Jamie, is this a final score you may have predicted last week if somebody had been like, bet $10 on this game? You just got to, try to get as close as you can. Would you have predicted 34-24 William & Mary, or would you have thought it'd been a bigger blowout or less?
I would have thought 34-ish for William & Mary. I would have thought somewhere in the teens for Campbell. So they outperformed. They definitely did, and I think it was just off of their first half. They got a good, quick start. They played well early, but, the depth of William & Mary really showed once they came out of half, and maybe not even that deep in the game, mid-second quarter. And then, that game wound up where it did. But, yeah, I would definitely have had a little bit larger spread with William & Mary's defense performing a little bit better against the pass.
So maybe William & Mary, the slightest amount of underperformance, but at the same time, Campbell on the rise. So that little bit of both that Markham brought up could be true. Kyler, you got that grin on you where you're like, all right, you guys had your fun. Time for me to swing.
Here comes negative. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, here he comes.
I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't think CA has any elite teams. I think William & Mary is very good, depending on the matchups, as a quarterfinal caliber team. And I think they're going to have a lot of these games where maybe it's decided within 10, 12, 13, maybe 17 points versus the bad teams. I just don't see this William & Mary team blowing out anyone. And maybe it is a little bit of bias because I didn't get to see a lot of CA teams until the playoffs last year, and nothing about what they did impressed me. And then again, I don't think Campbell has done anything ever to impress anyone. The first quarter and a half, it was a very fun, competitive game. Then, like Jamie said, it was never really in doubt after that field goal before halftime. Then it was like, all right, Campbell, you did your thing, but you didn't really think William & Mary was going to give up the lead. And it became kind of a boring game in the second half where there was really no opportunity for Campbell to win. So William & Mary, I think they did what they did. I think they're a quarterfinal caliber team, and winning by 10 against a CA opponent, I mean, that's probably what you're going to expect from this team. They ran efficiently. I was actually surprised by their passing attempts. Maybe they're going to try and throw out a little more balanced attack than what they were last year. But, I don't know. It's just they did what they were supposed to. Like maybe Jamie said, maybe you thought Campbell would have 17 points. And they kind of did until the last minute. So, I don't know. Nothing really changed.
Yeah, I mean, quarterfinal is about what I said. I've got them ranked 7. Yeah. That's a quarterfinal team. I think you're dead on. There's nothing elite in the CAA. The CAA is a good conference with no great teams.
Yeah, it's good. It's a bigger SoCon.
A bigger SoCon. Oh, Kevin will love that. And a team that maybe isn't getting enough love here, Kyler Neal, I'm really going to throw this your way as we're entering Big Sky country. Timothy Rosario. Timothy, thanks for asking the question because this is coming from Twitter. He even tweeted at the podcast on Twitter. So, Timothy, we appreciate you, my man. He wants to know, what are the chances that UC Davis gets a seed? They avoid both Montana State and Idaho, so they could have a really good record, like 9-2 or 10-1. They're kind of an underrated team from a year ago, he believes. So, Kyler, as I pull up on YouTube here the schedule of UC Davis, what do you think, Big Sky Man? What do we have for the Aggies here?
Well, they're going to lose next week. And I don't think that game's even going to be that close.
Are they versus a Pac-2 team?
Versus a Pac-2 team, they are going to get demolished. There's only one undefeated conference in college football, and it's the Pac-12, aka the new Pac-2 in a year. But I mean, looking at the rest of their schedule, maybe Southern Utah, maybe Jamie's being right. Maybe they're actually better than what people are giving them credit for. But then, they don't play. They get Montana at home. That's awesome. They go to Weber, who struggled a little bit versus a D2 team. And then, they don't play Montana State, and they don't play Idaho. So there's a chance this UC Davis team can go pretty far with their schedule and potentially get to 9 wins, 8 wins. I don't know. I want to pump the brakes. Again, this is like the North Alabama thing. What has Texas A&M Commerce done to justify any type of respect for me? I get they beat Southeastern Louisiana last year. But that was wasn't that the only team they beat? That was like a good team, or was it UCA when they upset UCA? Something like that. I forgot.
That was Lindenwood.
That was Lindenwood. Okay. So, yeah, Texas A&M, they beat Southeastern Louisiana, Matt Shirt right now. They beat them last year. Other than that, they weren't that good of a team. So this is kind of what you would expect a top 15 team to probably do to still a transitioning team who's not playoff eligible. But UC Davis did look good. I will say that. They look sound. They look very balanced. They look like they got a tough defense. But again, when you're playing some of these teams where they haven't done anything to prove themselves, it is hard to justify. Is Texas A&M slightly better than a Pioneer League team? Maybe, right? I'm not sure yet.
The question I have, though, for you, Kyler, really is, and boy, Kevin would eat this up. He's just going to love this comment.
Are they going to beat every SoCon team? Probably.
Well, it's the schedule, right? And I think Timothy seriously is maybe sniffing up something here, which is good. Oregon State, you lose to that, whatever, but you're at home against Southern Utah. Eastern comes to you. Cal Poly, you get Montana at home. You got to go to Weber, like you said. That's tough. But then let's, just put it out there. Northern Arizona, then it's gave up 81 points to Oregon, Idaho State, Sac State at the end, which is certainly it's a rivalry game and it's a tough challenge, but it's at home. What if they only lose to Oregon State? That's got to be at least 7 or 8 seed, Jamie, don't you think? What are we looking at here?
If they only lose to Oregon State, they'll be a top 3 seed.
Oh, yeah, if they only lose to Oregon State, there'll be a seed. But
their schedule's not even that impressive based off of the opponents.
Off Macy, it's still the 11th strongest strength of schedule.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see,
that's how bad the rest of the FCS is.
So could they afford one loss and get a seed? Here's the thing. Something could always go crazy, and that could happen. But realistically, do you see them getting a seed if they had one loss? Say to Weber by a touchdown.
Yeah, because they still have 2 ranked. They still have 2 ranked wins. What's crazy is nowadays we are blaming someone for 3 ranked teams on their schedule, and if they win it, are they going to get a seed? Right? They still have 3 ranked teams on their schedule and an FBS team who is a top 25 FBS team. So, it doesn't look that impressive if you are a contending team. But on Massey or Macy, whatever they want to call themselves, they do have the 11th strongest strength of schedule. So if they go with only losing an Oregon State, they're a top 3 seed. If they lose to maybe one team, still have 2 ranked wins, they're probably still an 8 seed.
Well, the Aggies may have a shot. Listen, the time to figure out seeds is now.
Yeah. So, Jamie, do they get a seed right now?
We have to have this figured out.
Arrow up, but I've got them ranked 15. I think they're still going to be on the outside because, if they do this, if they do that, I think we can all agree they're going to drop a game somewhere. They'll drop another game. They'll probably drop 2 games, in the conference. Not that they couldn't run the table in the conference, but it's the Big Sky. Hell, even Idaho State gave San Diego State a run.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's the one we should have gave credit to.
That's the other one I was trying to come up with. They were within 8 points halfway through the 4th quarter.
Yeah,
maybe that's an improved team. I don't know. Dan Hawkins against Cody Hawkins. Maybe Dan wants to let his son, look good. Start the conspiracy now.
Oh, Daddy's going to want to bend him over and spank him.
He's going to want to whip him.
Yeah.
But, all of that to say is that I don't see them as a team in the seeding discussion. I see them as a team that has a great shot to have a very good, positive season that should wind them up in the playoffs. But I personally right now don't have them in the seeding discussion if you're asking me about seeds.
I'm putting them in the same discussion as Southern Illinois right now, where none of us talked about really the seeding, but we did mention they don't have that brutal of a schedule.
That's fair.
UC Davis is kind of in the same situation for me. We're thinking they're playoff teams. We're thinking they're good, and on paper they look good. Are they going to be good enough to get a seed? Who knows? We'll have to find out. I don't think either of these matchups really proved too much outside of they looked really good against a very inferior team.
Likely other factors may have to come into play for the seed to happen unless they put it fully in their control and basically walk away with just an FBS loss. So it'll be interesting. Wow. Okay. Good breakdown. I like that SIU comp there at the end. And last one for the Big Seven, the best for last, Joshua Hoffman, Jackrabbit fan extraordinaire. Still having my camera roll that photo with you at Frisco, my man. The horns down makes me sad, but you're still a good guy. He wants to know which individual players are the X factors in Montana State versus South Dakota State. Okay, we'll be predicting this for Game of the Week, so no predictions now, but let's discuss what could be one of the biggest matchups that we've seen in a long time. Typically, when it's this high-ranking thing, it's it's South Dakota State versus North Dakota State. But here we go. We got the Bobcats. Round 3, as I'm going to consider it, as SDSU went to the semifinals out there in Bozeman and got blasted. Not blasted. They lost by about the same amount as South Dakota State beat the Bobcats last year. So we're in round 3 coming into Dana at South Dakota State, and we're talking X factors. On the outside looking in, Jamie, what are some of the X factors for this humongous matchup, which will definitely affect seeding, if you ask me?
I think the biggest matchup in this game is going to be the Montana State running attack, because they do it with about 65 different guys against that linebacking core of South Dakota State. And of course, you always want to talk front seven when you talk about running the ball, but I'm going to specifically call the linebackers. And if Montana State can have some success, they'll make the game close. If Adam Bach and company shut them down and hold them to 4 yards a carry, 3.5 yards a carry, it's going to be a long day and a long trip back to Bozeman. So that's just kind of overarching what I think is the matchup to watch. I mean, you could maybe come up with some individual one-on-one stuff, but I think from a package standpoint, that's the best thing to look at, is see what's going to determine how this game flows from start to finish.
I love your pick, Jamie, and I just have to go with the passing attack of Montana State as an absolute X factor for a positive or a negative. I view South Dakota State this year like 2013 or 2018 NDSU, where if I was a South Dakota State fan, I'd just be like, we're going to win every game, and I'm not really nervous about much of anything, maybe NDSU. South Dakota State fans won't admit that because they're dumb, and they like to say, oh, every game is one at a time, and we're playing Texas American D2 University this week, but you just got to go one at a time. It's like, listen.
Leave chat alone.
Twitter does not cover up how we know you really think. So here's the thing. If I'm a South Dakota State fan and I look at that team as just so balanced, running attack, the lines are ferocious, the defense is so good, they're so well coached. They're going to hate this, but here's the reality, is when NDSU in 2013, 2018, and many years, when we would play an offense, no matter how highly ranked it was, no matter how great it was, especially in those years where I was totally confident we were winning the whole thing, I'd be like, wait, you're telling me they run the ball a ton, but they don't really pass? So you just mentioned someone who's one-dimensional. Yeah, I'm not afraid of that team at all. I literally have no fear of that team because we're just going to zone in on their strength. We're going to take it away from them, and they're not going to be able to move the ball. And the X factor here for me is, can Montana State make South Dakota State respect their pass a little bit? Because if they can't, SDSU is just going to hone in, stop the run, and Mark Gronowski and that offense is going to score enough on Montana State where MSU is not going to get down the field. So my ultimate X factor here is, can South Dakota State be forced to back up on their heels a little bit in the secondary and by the linebackers, by the passing game? And I'm not sure if Montana State can make them do that. Are we seeing a different team here, Kyler? Montana State coming in, maybe a different mentality, but is it different from the semifinals last year?
I don't know if it's different from the semifinals or if it's the same team. I do expect a closer game than the semifinals. I will say that. But I don't know if there's much difference in the two teams. So I mean, the X factors, I think you got to look at this new freshman running back that Montana State has. Now, the crazy thing about this is Jamie just said it. They run 68 different players on their roster, so who knows if he's going to be the stud next week. But this little freshman, what was it, Scottrey Humphrey? I mean, he absolutely just torched Utah Tech. But that's kind of expected. We thought they'd run all over him. They ran all over him. It is what it is. But if he could be that new Isaiah Fonse and be that long-term back who's there every single year, and he, hopefully he doesn't get hurt, that is a scary team. The X factor for South Dakota State is going to be that D line. Montana State doesn't have this ginormous offensive line, but they are pretty quick and athletic. But we saw what quick and athletic abilities did against South Dakota State last year. We saw there wasn't much that Montana State's offensive line can do, and I think their offensive line is even a little smaller, but people think they're experienced. So who knows? All I know is we're going to find something between these two. Probably South Dakota State's going to win. We're going to talk about it at the end of this podcast, so I won't give my scores. But yeah, that defensive line versus the offensive line, that's the X factor versus South Dakota State. And then maybe this new running back could be the new Afonso if he continues to be healthy. But I agree with you, Matt. They have to, if they want a chance to win this game, they're going to have to figure out a way to throw the ball a little bit more. I mean, maybe watch the Holy Cross game and figure it out, because North Dakota State thought they would still run the same game plan of running it down their throats. That didn't work. Montana State ran it down their throats. That didn't work. Maybe you got to pull a little bit of Holy Cross and watch some film and just throw 4 or 5 yard slants up the middle. Maybe that's the only weakness South Dakota State has.
Yeah, I mean, that's why South Dakota State and other teams, especially SDSU, that's how they would slowly and methodically beat North Dakota State in the past. It was those 4 or 5 yard slants make the defense of NDSU respect you a little bit, then he'd hit you with the 4 yard run. A tactical, good, balanced attack down the field. And I'm not convinced Montana State can do that. But
no, even when they try and throw, it seems like they're just still throwing 50-50 balls 25 yards down the field instead of just trying to, their short yardage plays, they're just running. They're being an option team. But then all of a sudden now it's 3rd and 10. All right, we're going to throw it 25 yards. Well, no shit, Yar. Why? So, we'll see if they have a better game plan against South Dakota State.
It will be interesting, and we will get those predictions out there coming up in the game of the week. All right, gentlemen, that is some great stuff in those first 7 questions. It's making me hungry for some tacos.
It's time to put your money where your mouth is. And if you're right, put some tacos in there too. This is Thompson's Taco Bets.
Taco King, I look forward to buying some Frisco tickets to sit down there with him in the stands. Mr. Brian Thompson tomorrow when those tickets go on sale. All right, guys, Thompson's Taco Bet. First things first, the FCS Fans Nation podcast is brought to you by Walk On Apparel. Walk On Apparel specializes in FCS and mid-major apparel and believes that every fan base should have quality apparel options to rep the schools that they love. Along with you receiving a high-quality product, 10% of the profit from every sale is donated directly to that school's athletic fund. Visit walkon-apparel.com and use promo code FCS Fans Nation to get 10% off of purchases for your FCS and mid-major apparel. Limited schools are currently available, but there are new releases monthly. Walk On Apparel, up the fans and up the culture. And for Game of the Week, which is coming up between Montana State and South Dakota State, if you would like to increase your betting odds in terms of the lines or what the final score of that may be, make sure that you download the Versus Sports Simulator app. The Versus Sports Simulator app is the #1 app with the most analytical and data-based results for you to predict games in the FCS, mid-major, and FBS level. Make sure you use the promo code FCS Fans Nation to get a discount when you download the Versus Sports Simulator. We appreciate Walk On Apparel and Versus Sports Simulator for sponsoring our show. That being said, we are sponsored by Taco King for Thompson's Taco Bets. And gentlemen, here you go. the over-under here on rushing yards in Montana State in the SDSU game is going to be the question. There were 334 rushing yards the last matchup between Montana State and South Dakota State. So I ask you, over or under 375.5 rushing yards total for Montana State versus South Dakota State, not in the snow. Nice, balmy fall weather there in South Dakota. What do you think, Kyler? Over or under 375.5 total rushing yards for the teams?
Well, I think MSU will be able to run a little bit better than they did last year, but South Dakota State was able to run a buttload too last year. Man, 375.5. I'm going to go over, but I don't think it's going to be by much.
Over 375.5. Ooh, it's a pretty good line there. Jamie, you agree with Mr. Neal or no?
I don't really want to, but like he said, you said, better weather. Montana State's got to be better than they were. I'm gonna take the over, but he says by a little. I'm gonna say it goes over 400.
Dang, going over top. All right. Well, now I just need to be a rebel here. But honestly, like 334 last time, and I think we're gonna actually see a little bit more of a passing performance from the stud, best QB in the FCS, Mark Gronowski. So, yeah, I'll take the under. I'll take the under in this bet. We'll say 352 rushing yards for South Dakota State, Montana State. Either way, we hope we get a little bit of balance from both teams, which makes it a lot more fun. And I hope that game gets here quickly, as quick as the quick hits.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. These are the quick hit questions of the week.
Gentlemen, okay, before we do the quick hit questions, I added this in here. Nobody asked this question because we asked for fan questions before this game finished. Talk to me a little bit about the Rattlers, which rightfully picked them to beat Jackson State last week. Jamie, what do you think? Talk about the Rattlers' victory overcoming Jackson State with primetime moving on, man.
Well, they started right from the opening kick, didn't they? Just pretty much returned that, and away it went. But, yeah, wish I had stuck with what I had said in the preseason, but for some reason I went back on it and got that one wrong. But Florida A&M looked like a very good football team. I don't think it says anything worse about South Carolina State or anything even worse about Jackson State. I think Jackson State's still a good team. But Florida A&M, I guess I needed to stick with the fact that they're the best team in the SWAC, and I think they still are.
Rattlers were looking good. Congratulations to them. That's to get that thing off your back and to beat Jackson State after everything. It was great to have Dion and all the success there, but it's kind of cool to see the top dog get knocked down a peg. So, gentlemen, we'll answer anything on this podcast. And Dustin Helton, the Rev, wants to know, in a survey, 47% of Americans said that they weren't good with chopsticks. Are you someone who can use them? Kyler, can you use a pair of chopsticks? You're cultured, man. You're kind of a foodie. I guarantee you can.
Dude, my uncle's Chinese. He showed me how to use chopsticks growing up, and Chinatown in Seattle. So yeah, I can pick up whatever you want. I'll take that hat right off your head, Jamie, with chopsticks. You just get it.
I'm in the land of culture here in Fargo, so really good sushi, up here with all the oceans and lakes that surround North Dakota. So yes, use chopsticks quite well. Spent a lot of time in Asia in the Marine Corps and really picked it up there. So that really was the game changer for me. Jamie, out in Virginia, you use chopsticks at all?
Do I use? No, I'm terrible at it. Terrible, absolutely horrible. I've tried. I feel like when Kyler and his wife and I went to lunch in Spokane, I think he tried to teach me, and I couldn't do it. I vaguely remember that, and Kyler, is being the good friend he is, did not throw me under the bus just there, but I'll do it myself. I'm terrible.
Our Ron Swanson of the group, and we love every bit of them. Here you go, guys. Talk about a mixed bag of results for the MEAC, says Jason Plotkin and Preston Adams, who had a similar question on Twitter. A pair of sub-D1 losses, but Morgan State over Richmond. With South Carolina State's rough start, do we anoint Morgan State as the early favorites? What do you think, Jamie? Are they the early favorites for this one?
Are we all forgetting about North Carolina Central? I mean, that's the favorite. Morgan State looked good. You know, they went and beat Richmond. We'll see how impressive a win that is as we go through the season. South Carolina State, I mean, they're 3-8 team that's coming back to be another 3-8 team, it looks like. But yeah, North Carolina Central until proven otherwise.
All righty. Kyler Neal, here you go, my man. Matt Bernhardt wants to know this must be loosely based off one of the best troll posts he had on the page this week. Boy, I've invited so many Montana fans to the page because of that. So thank you, Matt. We appreciate you increasing the page numbers, but they are Grizz fans, so it's not working in your favor because I know you like the Bobcats. He says Utah Tech plays Montana next week. What is the line for that game given the performances this week by Montana and Montana State? Basically, is Montana going to look better against Utah Tech, Kyler?
Montana's going to look better against Utah Tech than they did against Butler, but they're not going to look as good as Montana State did versus Utah Tech.
Because Montana State may just be the better team. Andrew Markham wants to know, Kyler, what does the Southland have to do to get more teams competitive against the rest of the FCS/FBS? Southland strong? I mean, what does the Southland have to do here?
Leave the Southland?
I was going to say poach more Missouri Valley teams and Big South or Big Sky teams and, you know, the UAC teams. I don't know. I mean, Nichols played decent, I guess. I don't know if there's anything they can do besides maybe McNeese finally needs to go back to being McNeese. Other than that, I mean, it looks like there's 2 decent teams in the Southland and a whole bunch of non-decent teams. So we'll kind of have to figure it out. But, I mean, Houston Christian just did win 66-0, guys. So,
yeah.
You know, maybe they are the greatest team of all time.
Here they come, Houston Christian on the up and up. That's where, if you're hosting a podcast, you should go to those type of games, I think. Colby Peterson, our main man, Jamie, after a 3-8 season last year, is Albany for real? Great Danes, they for real?
The offense is for sure. TBD, I think they're going to be a much improved team. I think they'll keep themselves on the bubble most of the year, but I don't think they're a playoff team. But they're also not the 11th best team, 12th best team in the CAA. They might be the 6th or 7th best.
All right, on the up and up. Those Great Danes are growing up, and when they grow up, they get big. Jacob Martinez. Oh, Jacob, we miss you at the FCS level. Literally one of the best humans.
Go Owls.
That have hootie hoo, baby, that have ever existed on that fan page. Don't ever leave us, Jacob. Just hang out. He says, not so much a question as an admission. It only took a few targeted rule changes, but the Owls are finally done with the triple option. Switch to an RPO-based pistol look. You win, Kyler Neal. You win, Kyler. You get a moment here for destroying the triple option.
No, because we still have some guy chatting about, you know, the Citadel and their triple option. So we're
Did you see how many yards they ran against Georgia Southern? I mean, look how many yards.
No.
Oh, 0 points. Oops.
Yeah, I didn't even look. All I know
0.
is the triple option is slowly dying. The rule change definitely sped it up, but also just society sped up. It's a shitty offense when you have no players to compete against anyone good. So, yeah, I'm glad the triple option's dying. Go back to high school. That's only where it should survive.
Is North Alabama greatly improved, or has Chat hit a speed bump in their effort to get back to the playoffs? Colby Peterson and Dustin Helton had those things. North Alabama's for real, guys. All 3 of us on this podcast agree. The Lions are probably winning their conference this year, and prep for some natties in the next decade because North Alabama.
They improved greatly. Chatty his speed bump. Neither one's making the playoffs because they both still stink.
On the up and up. Lions on their campus. Real Lions. So, fun fact from the series right there. They're on the up and up, guys. North Alabama's going to be good. SFA potential for the UAC champion. Look at the first half of their season, the momentum they can take into the second half, Andrew Markham says. Not so fast, Jamie Williams, or what?
Not so fast, my friend. Nope. Central Arkansas still looks like the best team in that conference to me. I'm not going to change that after 1 week, especially after, like Kyler said earlier, the Bears hung with Oklahoma State for most of that game. I mean, all the way into the third quarter. It was a 6-point game. So I know we don't want to judge teams on what they do against FBS teams, but that's all we got to go off of right now. So 3 or 4 more weeks, I think UCLA will prove that they're the best team in the UAC. and SFA is a contender. I mean, I don't think they're terrible. They look pretty good against the defending Sunbelt champion. But yeah, I don't think they're going to win the UAC.
3 or 4 more weeks when we get the Revs' first FCS poll out there publicly. That's when it should count. Brandon Anderson, guys, to finish the quick hit questions. What are your favorite toppings, mix-ins for blizzards, concretes, or whatever shakes in your area? Okay, first things first. I've never heard the term concretes. Is that Brandon specific? I'm wondering. We got East Coast, West Coast, Midwest here.
Wait, is a hurricane what Sonic has?
Oh, yeah. Is it a Sonic?
No, that's wait. A hurricane's what like Zip. Yes, Sonic has hurricanes. I think I don't remember.
I don't know.
You said a cement or concrete?
Brandon, make sure that you write what a concrete is, unless I spelled it wrong. But I'm just copying and pasting here. So we'll go with blizzards or whatever your shakes or DQs are. Kyler, what's your mix-ins for the old blizzard?
I'm such a basic bitch. I go cookie dough, man.
Oh,
it's so good,
man. I always get extra. I always pay for the extra. But
smart man.
Same thing. Extra, because if you don't ask for extra, there's nothing on the bottom.
Can we guess Jamie's?
Oh, I'd love to guess Jamie's.
All right, just looking at that man, I feel like he's not even a blizzard guy. He's more just give me a scoop of vanilla ice cream because I'm too manly to handle anything.
That's the thing. I want to say like he probably will want like just like hot fudge and the chocolate, or just the most basic.
Now it's gonna be something weird. He's like birthday cake, pixie dust.
Well, I will say I have not had a blizzard in years, just because there's no Dairy Queen near us.
I'm taking that as a win.
But when I did, it was an Oreo. But yeah, I'd rather have like a chocolate ice cream with like hot fudge and all the chocolate fixings in the world.
Yes, there it is.
We won.
Am I that damn predictable?
Yeah, no, we just know each other that well at this point. We're going on year 7 here. Holy moly! Oh, that's classic. That's a good one to end it on right there.
I think we're not gonna that where y'all guess my answer to all these random questions each week.
Oh, we're not gonna end the podcast yet, guys, because we got maybe the regular season game of the year coming up. So it's time to predict the game of the week.
This is the matchup you should be paying attention to. This is the FCS Fans Nation game of the week.
All right, guys. Game of the week, number 3 Montana State versus number 1 South Dakota State. This coming Saturday, going to be an absolute, should be a great one. If I did not have military drill weekend, which I do, I'd already talked to Allison about this. I was going to forgo the NDSU home opener in the Dome. I was going to go down there, and Matt Bernhardt and some of the guys from South Dakota State, Brennan, all those others, I was going to go down there and watch this game. I mean, it's a 2 hours, 56-minute drive. Would have been way better than NDSU whooping up on Rhode Island or Maine or whoever we got. So, but this should be a good one. And Kyler, what are you feeling, man? You going to take Bobcats? You going to take Rabbits?
I think this is going to be a more competitive game than we saw last year. That being said, I just think, the Jackrabbits are too balanced. Their defensive front 7 is too dominant. And I don't think Montana State is balanced enough, and I don't think they have the ability to really throw the ball. And I think in order to beat South Dakota State, you're going to have to put it through the air this year. I don't think you're going to be able to, just try and rely on your run game. Even though Montana State is probably the best run team in the nation, I just don't see a team being one-dimensional, even though they're phenomenal being that one-dimensional, being able to beat the South Dakota State Jackrabbits at home. So give me the Jackrabbits. Give me by 13.
13 points to the Rabbits. Jamie, any love for the Bobcats here, or is number 1 staying there?
I mean, I got plenty of love for the Bobcats, but I don't have to pick them to win this game. We know what South Dakota State is. It's a team it's a veteran, skilled, fairly mistake-free team. Again, not 39-18 or whatever it is. How about 31-20 South Dakota State? I would love for that to be 24-20 late, but I think it's going to be more like 31-13, and that's where the extra touchdown comes. But I'm going to take the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, I hate to be boring. My brother asked me that today. He goes, "Man, I was I'll move away from the state. Just give me the NDSU rundown. Tell them about NDSU. But then I talk about SDSU. I'm like, SDSU this year, imagine like 2013, 2018 NDSU. But then the NCAA was like, well, there was this time where everybody gets sick. So if you all want to come back one more year, you totally can. That's basically South Dakota State this year. And he was like, holy crap. So I'm not betting against that team ever until there's all zeros on the dashboard and they've lost. So best player, best QB, Mark Gronowski's at the helm. Heck of a team across the board. Jimmy Rogers will keep it steering. I do think there's something about the mental game, though. You guys know I predict stuff off of this. So I think it will be closer than we expect, but South Dakota State's still going to win. So I'll go 31-21, Jacks with the victory this upcoming weekend.
So we're still all predicting a double-digit 10 to 13 point game.
Yes,
so
sir.
Based off of that doesn't make this the game of the week, right? So I'm going to nobody knows I was going to say this. I'm going to jump it in. Weber State, Northern Iowa. That's another good game this week. Give me a score.
Great game.
Go.
Oh, I do not get. I'll die on this, and you can use it on Twitter. I haven't gotten the Northern Iowa hype in the last couple of years or whatever existed. I don't get it this year either. Like, I don't understand where it's coming from. I'm like, where is the offensive tackle who's an NFL draft pick, the free corner? I don't get it. And maybe I'm just uneducated. I don't buy Northern Iowa this year. I'm going to take Weber State in that game by 4. I'm going to take Weber State 27-23. I'm going to take Weber State.
I think Theo Day is a good quarterback and probably the best quarterback UNI has had in a while. Weber State did struggle against Central Washington, but I do think Central Washington is better than any NEC or Pioneer League team. So, I'm going to take UNI. I do think it's going to be a competitive defensive battle, but I don't know. I had Weber State missing the playoffs. I picked UNI in the preseason when I was talking about this game, so I'm just going to stick with it. I saw about what I needed to see from both of them. Give me a close battle, 24-21, Northern Iowa.
Yeah, I've got Northern Iowa, but I've got a struggle game, a 17-14 type game.
It's going to be close.
Yep.
It will be a battle, and I think we're going to see a lot more this week compared to last week. Regardless, you will have us weekly here on the FCS Fans Nation podcast, and this does bring us to the end of our show. We really appreciate you guys listening to us this morning, afternoon, and post Labor Day. For those of you who had it off, we really hope you enjoyed it. And ladies and gentlemen, you have listened to the FCS Fans Nation podcast, which is sponsored by the Versus Sports Simulator and Walk On Apparel, and we've got great matchups coming up this weekend. Jamie, final thoughts before we send it off at the end of our podcast for episode 4 of season 7.
Yeah, I think we had a little bit of a slow start to the FCS season, so let's hope that week 2 jump starts us. We get some good matchups, maybe a couple upsets, and either way, it's still football. It's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's go.
Absolutely. Everybody enjoy that Montana versus South Dakota game this weekend. It's going to be a fun one. Boom.
Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred listening platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, or even YouTube. And make sure to follow our FCS Fans Nation social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football. Boom.
Let's intentionally write number 3 Montana versus number 1 University of South Dakota and see who catches it. We'll see who catches it.
I'll call them it.
And then what we have to do is we have to double down and just act like they're the ones who are crazy when they bring it up. Like, what are you talking about? Do you even watch the FCS?